All right, welcome to episode number 71 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording on June the 7th, 2020. My name is Eric. I'm the host of the show based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. As a first responder, I witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events and started a small preparedness company to help people better prepare for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
My name is Ian, and I live on Vancouver Island. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, ham radio operator, and my farm's designated handyman.
Hold on. Certified?
I did get certified.
Oh! And you wait to tell us in your intro.
Crap, now I'm behind.
That's what
my name's Alan. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, soon to be ham radio operator, and overall safety nerd.
Pressure's on.
And I'm Hughes from Nova Scotia. I'm a Canadian Armed Forces veteran, volunteer firefighter, and station chief. I'm also a volunteer search and rescue technician and a prepper. I've been preaching and living the prepper lifestyle to varying degrees for the last 6 years or so, and this was born out of necessity for the protection and survival of my young family, which includes 3 children, and I am not working towards my ham radio license, so I'll get to it.
All right, want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air? Buy a Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt at rapidsurvival.com. All proceeds help to keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few moments and like us on Facebook, submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, and different, even if there's just a topic you want us to cover. Shoot us an email, feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
Or even just help us prove that the email address still works, because nothing ever comes in. We've got some content under curfew for you in this episode. Yes, the horrible jokes continue into episode 71. We're going to start off with some preparedness-related news. Next, we'll let you know what we've done for our preparedness since the last episode, and then we're going to get into the main topic. Let's move into some news.
Sorry, I was on mute there. It is. I just forgot to take the mute off. 2 things, current and one ongoing. If you're up on your Book of Revelations, there are a whole bunch. There's a swarms of locusts chewing up crops in India. That just adds to the Jumanji level of that is 2020. So that's a big deal. It's going to cause even less food security than they have now. And then a couple of weeks back, but it's an ongoing problem, forest fires in the Chernobyl area, setting off radiation spikes, which if you go back to our nuclear fallout episode, we discussed why that's a bad thing. I forget where that was. That's a while back, but check that out. So that's a big deal. Obviously, there was Chernobyl had that giant meltdown a few years ago, 30 years ago, and they've still got some stuff going on there, and it's getting worse all of a sudden. So, not only forest fires, but nuclear forest fires.
2020. What the heck?
2020, man. That's just how it's going to be.
I think you nailed it. I called it the Jumanji thing because, what's next?
I take no credit for that at all. That is that's just a thing going around, especially Instagram. It's one of the socials. June has arrived. You've now reached level 6 of Jumanji. So that's a thing now.
Well, and you think about it too, you're totally right. Because if the trees are growing up and they're absorbing the radioactive soil and bringing some of the bits into the trees and it gets stored there, kind of like a carbon trap or whatever. And then when it gets burned off, it's going to release whatever it has, and the half-life isn't quite. The half-life on some of the stuff hasn't even been reached yet, right?
I think you're right.
So, pretty crazy
exactly.
stuff.
So now you've got all these radioactive particles dancing through the air on the smoke. So that's awesome.
Good for them. Up against COVID.
Fantastic.
We use radiation to treat cancer. I don't know if the same thing applies.
Well, a little bit is a good thing. Maybe a lot is a bad thing. We'll see. Yeah. Anyways, for myself, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's been some riots lately.
No,
you don't say.
Seriously.
Where have I been?
Yeah, a couple of things. I just, the spin-off effects of a lot of stuff with these riots. Obviously, we're going to talk about those more in the main episode or main topic here. But our glorious leader taking a knee. Bit of political pandering going on there because he basically did his knee and then left with a bit of jeering in the background. But politicians will always try and take advantage of the situation and to blame the other side, no matter what stripe of politician they are. And I just think it's kind of sad people kind of latch onto that to better their party or themselves or whatever. So I put the link to the Guardian on that one because they weren't proud of him either. But I have to ask, what's with the lack of social distancing? I thought that was a thing up until like the riot started, right?
Like COVID can't possibly spread during a riot.
Yeah, I guess
Sorry, you go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess the COVID is no longer the main news topic, so I guess that no longer applies. And
yeah, I mean, the whole JT
it's over now, so Xander would be proud of Justin's post for sure.
I think for me, the whole JT thick's an E thing. I mean, I've got a couple issues with it, but especially where, Trudeau and his gang of liberals and the NDP decided to give themselves the summer off and not reconvene Parliament until the fall because, of COVID-19, but it's okay to go march in a protest with thousands of other people and be shoulder to shoulder. So, if you're going to be a hypocrite and say we're not going to reopen Parliament until the fall, but then you can go to a protest, it's kind of a hard sell, guys. So
it's almost as if they have some kind of other motive.
Yeah, like an agenda.
Almost.
I don't know. I'm feeling it here.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention too is the fact that although it happened in a different country and obviously nobody in Canada was to blame of what caused the original bout of riots. Sure enough, we've got protests happening in Montreal in support. Whether you think it's a good or bad thing, I'm just trying to show the fact that it can spread to other countries quite easily just on basically an idea or in solidarity. It doesn't take much in your own country for stuff to start. So I just put it through in an article for the protests happening in Montreal, which is actually fairly large.
Yep, they've also been through a lot of Europe, England, France. I think even Portugal and Poland all had solidarity demonstrations. I think is how they were being labeled for the same thing.
Cool, that's pretty much all I had. Anybody else?
No, any article I could pull out was riots. Oh, by the way, there were some riots. I figured you've got it covered there. We'll move into what we've done lately for preps then. Let's start with Hughes.
Yeah, so we've got eyes on a new travel trailer that's going to hopefully finalize this week. It's looking to be like a 28-foot trailer. So, primarily going to be for family vacations and such with 3 young kids, but it's all part of my plan for bugging out as well. So I've also spent the last couple of days reviewing and beefing up my home network security. So I've introduced a bunch of new Unify gear within the network. So I've been playing around with that. It's expensive, but it's nice. And, it's been about probably 6 or 7 years since I've done any major work on my network. I've also set up a new NAS with triple redundancy. So I've got on-site, off-site, and I'm also backing up some encrypted content to Amazon's AWS Glacier setup, which is an extremely low-cost solution. So that's what I've been up to the last week.
Nice. The Unify stuff's very nice. I've been deploying it here too.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty. Oh yeah, geeking out on that.
All right, for myself, I got out to the range and put a bunch of rounds down range. It's been a while, so it was nice to take most of the firearms out for a walk at least. A couple of them had to stay put, but what do you do?
The old safe queens.
Yeah. Allegedly, that is.
Yeah.
The current ongoing reality, unfortunately. Okay, so I have to admit, after the last episode where we did the ham thing, I was like, okay, enough is enough. And so sure enough, I had a listener actually private message me and said, hey, listen, I know somebody that can test locally. And so I, because I've been putting it off for a year and a half since we started this or whatever. And so I basically just contacted the examiner and said, listen, can you do the exam on Friday? And he's like, yep. So that gave me a really artificial, high pressure, high stress deadline.
Yep.
So I basically spent the next 5 days power studying and going through it, just reviewing everything I'd gone over before, doing a bunch of practice exams and everything else, and kind of powered my way through it. And yeah, I got it taken care of on Friday. And the best part was the government's actually efficient in some respects, and the fact that it was a weekend now, it was after closed business on Friday, they were able to get my test results passed through. I got my call sign, and my radio operator certificate is already on the mail on the way.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it turns out, I found out, Eric, for everybody that's a ham out there, that you can actually take your call sign and you can actually check to not have your address or anything else shared because privacy issues now. So now it'll just show your name, province, and everything else, which is great because that's a lot of people are concerned about OPSEC when it comes to getting their ham license. And so, if you want to increase your OPSEC or whatever, at least keep it relatively good.
Yeah.
Because before you had to publicize your home address and all that kind of stuff, right?
So your name and sign there.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, everything, right? So now you can choose, and actually, unfortunately, CPP was taken, so I had to get TIR for the island retreat. So
yeah, that works.
Anyway, that's what I got.
Nice.
Yeah. So other than that, after I got the ham radio license done, I was pretty happy with myself, and so I got some needed maintenance on quad, which is also our farm tractor. So I actually rebuilt the carb last year, but via YouTube. I'd never done one before, and I did a good job. So it's been acting funny for the last year. So I had the other mentor give me a little hand there. He the fuel tank, everything, even the top of the engine. I cleaned it all out, got it to work first like a kit now, and got winch unstuck, which had all the metal cable kind of looped over on itself to the point where it wasn't even working. And so we kind of stretched that all the way out with some help and re-greased it and everything else. Now the winch works again, so I can take down trees properly.
Nice.
So that's all I did.
I did nowhere near that much. Spent this week with a heavy workload, so didn't do a whole ton of anything. Pulled out all of my camping gear, did some backyard camping this weekend with the kids, and got some kit tested, and drew up plans for my new emergency housing facility is what we're calling it, which is my big awesome garage that's going to be twice the size that it is now, and be living stable and lots of storage and all kinds of other goodies. So that was my week. Nothing anywhere near as cool as you.
It happens. We can't all compete with Ian. He always beats us anyways every week.
Well, I mean, he only works like 4 hours a month, so it's really hard to compare, right?
True.
Something like that. I did have to work this week, actually, and I just got back. I was actually studying whilst at work in between work duties. And it was actually pretty funny, like to the point where every time I was just before bed, I was like falling asleep doing practice exams and everything else. And because if you don't have that pressure, you're never going to get it done, right? So
Nope.
Artificial deadlines work.
We're going to have to find a time now to link up some repeaters and get chatting. Okay, so we move into the main topic. We're going to talk about rioting this evening.
Well, I have some questions for you after the show on the
I can't hear Ian anymore. I think he's
no. I think Ian. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as long as it's him. So there's I think it's important that we talk about the difference between protesting and rioting. I think we're all in agreement that protesting is good. Holding the government accountable for their actions is good. Keeping the people responsible for enforcing our laws, keeping them restricted to enforcing those laws and not making things arbitrarily. I think that is also really good. That is really different from taking stuff from a Target because you want a new TV. And I think that's there's a bit of a gap there, and although it's a gap, it's kind of a blurry line. So for our purposes, we're going to talk about the different, not protesting. We encourage that, but what happens if you happen to be caught up in a riot? I think that's the big difference, and that's the thing that we're going to focus on tonight.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge difference, and I have a really hard time understanding the let's smash everything and light it on fire perspective. Totally get the peaceful protest, get our point across, but when it gets to the point of smashing things and lighting stuff on fire and just taking stuff from stores for no apparent reason, of course it gets dangerous, and then that's something that we want to think about as far as if you get caught up in it or you find yourself maybe peacefully protesting and then all of a sudden the crowd flips on you. You need to have some plans in place as to how to get out of there and how to distance yourself and get out before it gets bad.
I find that interesting because I wasn't at any of these protests or riots or anything like that, and this is easy for me to say as an armchair warrior sitting here saying that I watched a lot of the live feeds that were happening over the last 2 weeks or so. But it almost seems like the protests start as just that, a protest, and there's probably a few bad apples within the group. like with any group, that decide that, we're going to start flipping over cars, burning them, breaking store windows, and breaking the store windows leads to looting. But there's almost, and I'm struggling to find a word, there's almost this gang-like mentality that kind of probably erupts, and there's probably only a few people that started the bad actions that I'm going to call flipping over police cars and breaking store windows and all that kind of stuff, but then people are like, oh, this is okay to do, I'm going to take part in it, and they may feel as though they've had some injustice done to them or their group or people that they identify with, and they feel as though this is a way of redemption, to go into Target and steal some electronics or some shoes and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think that these are definitely fed by that gang like mentality that happens in a protest, and obviously not everyone partakes in it. You've got a lot of people that are standing by recording this stuff that are not actively taking part in the looting, but there are a significant number of people that went in and destroyed like the Target that was in Minneapolis and the Apple stores and other cities and stuff, right? So I find that hard to wrap my head around that. And that's the part that bothers me. And I've heard people say, you can't be against George Floyd being killed and be against a riot at the same time. And I said, no, you can't. I mean, I'm against what happened to George Floyd, but I'm also against not the protests, but the rioting, the looting, and all that kind of stuff.
There's that whole group mentality, right? Where people think, I'm not going to get caught because no one's ever going to be able to identify me, and everybody else is smashing things and lighting it on fire. I may as well participate as well, or everybody, that big mob mentality, right?
And that's the key word right there. That's what I was looking for. Thanks. Is that mob like mentality? And the thing is you see police officers and police cruisers standing by and watching this happen, and you're saying, why aren't they doing anything? And you've got 1,000 people, or let's say a few hundred people that are breaking into a super center like a Target or a Walmart. What are 5 or 10 cops going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, right? And if that group of 5 or 10 or 100 people turn on those 5 officers, doesn't matter if they're armed or not, it's game over for those guys, right? So
it becomes a document game at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, you've heard of again, these are reports I've heard in the media, so take it with a grain of salt, of store owners in some cities in the U.S. last week calling the police department saying, rioters and looters are at my store, come help me. And the police department saying, listen, the whole city's under attack. Do what you got to do, right? Because they're not going to be able to mobilize police officers to go to your help at that point. So do you abandon it, or do you stand your ground?
And it is. And I think if we were to dig down a little bit deeper, and I'm no sociological anthropologist, anything, but I think if you were to dig down, you would see where the people that are angry with the police, and I'm not going to comment on whether that's right or wrong. I think the people who are angry at the police, who are not getting their response, they're the ones, they start lashing out, which causes that ripple effect because of a mob mentality. When everybody's angry, somebody smashes something and it's a police car. The next person can't smash a police car because he's not within reach, but there's something else there, and then something gets smashed. And I think that's if you were to break it down, you'd probably see something similar to that across most protests that turn into riots, as well as enough people out there that are just opportunistic and looking for a quiet way, so-called, to get in and out because they're not going to be able to be stopped or identified.
And then you also hear of people like, you'll see undercover officers within the crowds that seem to anger people because these are the guys that are walking around with the clearly visible like in-ear mic, right? So I mean, it's clearly people could see it. So I mean, they're identifying these people as undercover officers within the crowd. That angers the crowd. You've got reports from different cities where police officers were almost taunting the protesters, or as they're getting close to curfew and all that kind of stuff. Or things like, they had set up makeshift water stations for the protesters to have water and be able to hydrate, and the police were coming in and basically dismantling this and destroying all the water. Well, that just gets the protesters even more upset, even more angry. They're there protesting police brutality, and then they see these things happen, and that might be the clincher for some people, saying, we're out here peacefully protesting, and you come in and you destroy our water. Why? And that could be what really sets that mob mentality off at that point.
Yeah, there's so many different things that can set that mentality off, and then once you set it off, though, you can't put it back into the bottle, right? It's out, and that's it. As soon as things start to go down that hill,
you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
No, you certainly can't. Which is why, if you're out at a protest and you're paying close attention to the crowds and what's happening, and you start to see it kind of going down that slope, it might be time to start planning to get out of where you are, or at least planning your exit, or figuring out what's around you and what's the best way to get out. Just paying attention to the crowd's important.
With any hazard, and again, I think we talked about this in our nuclear episode. The three things that keep you safe are time, distance, and shielding. So time to escape. So the sooner you can identify that this is gone from a peaceful protest to an angry protest, or a peaceful protest to something violent, the sooner you can identify that, the more time you have to get yourself out. Distance, of course, the further away you can get from people doing bad things, the less likely you are to be hurt by those people. And shielding, the more hard stuff you can put between you and them, the safer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's another thought as well. And see, Ian's joined us again. If you reside in an area where there's protests that happen quite often, or if you're in an area where they maybe don't happen quite often, but they happen to be happening in your area at the time, and you don't have a way to escape because that's where you reside. Again, keeping an eye on the crowd and knowing how to, block your residents or protect your residents from things getting thrown at it or smashed, or staying away from the windows, or locking yourself downstairs in the basement or something if things go sideways. Just paying attention to that crowd and realizing, oh, okay, it's time to maybe get ahead of what's coming down the hill here.
Yeah, and I think I see it as a lot of these people within the mob that are committing these, I'm going to call them offenses, like the rioting and all that kind of stuff. They're very opportunistic, right? So if you have something flashy, you have something that is of value, try to hide it, right? Make sure that it's not an open site. People are probably still going to smash your windows, but it doesn't. If you're sheltering in place and you're somewhere safe within your home that you don't think people are going to come. I mean, again, this is not really a home invasion. People are looking for a crime of opportunity. They're smashing a window. They see a MacBook. They see a cell phone or something like that. They grab it and go, right? I don't think that they're going to be going through every drawer in your house and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the mob is moving, and so that's just my take on it. Is obviously make sure that you're safe. Make sure that anything that could be seen as something very opportunistic for them to grab is out of view. And I don't know what the consensus is. Should you have your lights on? Should you have your lights off? Should it look like somebody's home, like somebody isn't home? Because people are probably less likely to break into an occupied home than an unoccupied home, right? Understanding, especially in a lot of places in the States, people can be armed, and they can have that castle doctrine. So it's probably not worth losing your life for an iPhone, right? So
yep. Or even have something set aside that you can leave for them to take and feel as though they've taken something from your place.
Little honeypot.
You don't care about it, right?
Yeah. And vehicles, I mean, if you've got a one-car garage and if you've got two vehicles, maybe you bring one vehicle to work. Maybe that your workplace is 30 miles away. You go park that vehicle there, which, there's no protest happening. And then the other vehicle can be safely put away in the garage. Chances are it's probably not going to get damaged unless they manage to get in. But, there's a number of steps that you can take to shelter in place and hopefully stay safe. I don't know how I'd feel leaving my home knowing that there's riots in the area, because obviously then I have the fear that they may come into the home and grab stuff, but then at the same time, am I putting myself in harm's way and my family in harm's way by staying here, right?
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Right.
I think that all comes with reading the crowd and reading what's happening, right? If you can read it and see it's a protest, it's under control, there's nothing really to be worried about here, then you're okay. But as soon as it kind of starts, that vibe starts to change and it starts to go down that slippery hill, it's time to start thinking, well, okay, am I doing plan A or am I doing plan B? And plan A and plan B should obviously be planned out well in advance.
But I also live in a rural area where nothing really remotely dangerous happens. There's nothing to protest out here. And the homes are, a quarter mile apart sometimes. So it's a lot of walking for not a lot of gain.
Nothing remotely dangerous happens, says the guy that had 5 minutes last week to get out.
Well, nothing, okay, crime-wise.
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
But that level of complacency also leads to the problem, right? So, with a thorough risk analysis, if you've decided that that's low on your risk level, that's good. If if even if it's low on your risk scale, it's still a potential problem, and you still might only have 5 minutes to get out. Yep. So that's your home. If you happen to be out and about and things go south,
and you can't get back to your home,
can't get back to your home. If you happen to be caught up in one of these mobs, number one, be the gray man. Right? We've talked about that before. Be the gray man. don't stand out. If you stand out, you're either going to be labeled an undercover cop,
Yep.
or and be targeted that way, or you're going to be labeled an instigator because you're off to the side and you're going to be targeted by the police. So don't contribute to the problem, but don't stand out at all. Get as safe as you can, as quickly as you can, and keep yourself safe.
I think it's worth noting here, though, like if you're trying to make your way home and you encounter a crowd and you're in your vehicle, trying to go through the crowd with your vehicle is definitely not the way to go about, because everyone's going to have a cell phone. If there's 1,000 people in the crowd, there's going to be 900 cell phones pointed to your vehicle. Whatever you do is going to be all over social media, your plates, your description of vehicle, your face, and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and even if you were to come up to the protesters and they start, pounding on your vehicle, you panic, you hit the accelerator, you injure, kill a few people, that's it for you. I mean, you drove into a bunch of people. It doesn't matter if they were on the highway or not. I mean, I know how I feel about it. If people were trying to block my vehicle, I know what I don't want to do, but also I know the consequences of doing that. And you saw there was a very good example, and I think it was in Minneapolis. There was a FedEx truck on the highway. They were blocking it and basically starting to open the back of the truck and take some parcels and all kind of stuff. And they were banging on the windows and whatnot. And the driver just decided to hit the gas because he felt threatened for his life. And unfortunately, somebody was stuck under one of the axles, and driving a semi, you're not going to know that there's a person there, and kept going. And I think that person got killed. So, that was really unfortunate for that person. But if you see a crowd, by all means, don't try to go through it. It's not going to end well. They're not going to let you through peacefully, right? Nope. These aren't union members, for Unifor that are picketing, and so this is a very different story. And my advice is just to turn around and find another way home, I guess.
Well, because like Alan was said, and you said, Hughes, I mean, the target of a mob changes on a dime, right? It might be from like, let's beat up this old lady over here to let's beat up the FedEx driver over here. Yep. All they also has to happen is one guy just says, "Get that guy," and everybody's like, "Bob and tell you to just do it," without even thinking. So yeah.
And another one that we've seen many times was that red Dodge Ram truck with a horse trailer attached. And as he was slowly making his way through the crowd, they started to pound on his windows. I believe he had his spouse in his car or in the truck. They panic. He hit the accelerator. You think a couple of people are going to stop a 1-ton pickup with a 40-foot gooseneck trailer on the back? No, right? So just don't do it. Just find another way, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good way to keep, or a good reason to keep your ears on as many broadcasts as you can. I've got a scanner app on my phone. I can listen to most of the police bands in this area. There are a few that I can't get. Obviously, some of them are encrypted, but especially if you're in a major center, like New York, for example, you can hear 90% of their traffic. Most major American cities, if you find the right station, you can listen to the traffic and hear what's happening, as well as just the local commercial radio stations will generally keep you updated as to what's going on, so you can plan ahead, and that's super important, right? Stay away from it as much as you can.
It really comes down to situational awareness, just knowing what your surroundings are and knowing what you're driving into. And you've got to think, I mean, these people are on foot. You're in a vehicle. You've got the advantage. You've got the upper hand. You can turn around and hightail it out of there. They're never going to be able to catch you. No. But going into the crowd, that's not going to gain you anything. So.
Well, I mean, whether you're participating in the riot or you're just having to stumble across one, the chance of getting a criminal record out of the deal is pretty high.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, best just to avoid
and you're not going to be able to defend your actions. I mean, they're just going to see you drove through a crowd of people, and that's it. So
your car is sacrificial in that case. Like whatever you're driving, get out and walk away. Before you hurt somebody and they target you specifically. If you're a target of opportunity, they can have the car. Go for it.
They can torch the truck. I'll get a new one.
Yeah, I'll get a new one out of that. That's the best thing that could happen to my car right now. Is somebody stealing it on fire. If anybody's listening, by the way, contact.
And Alan's address is.
That's a good point, though, that we bring up. There is, if you do find yourself in a situation like this, be prepared to lose some property. Like it's going to most likely happen if you got to, toss something out, or you got to lose a vehicle, or rioters are coming through and you haven't had time to secure your property, or they've gotten through. Be prepared to lose some stuff. It's not worth the battle, especially with the laws here. You're going to lose, whether it's when you're fighting somebody trying to protect your property or later on in court after you've been charged. Just be prepared to lose property and replace it later.
That's the thing. I mean, part of being prepared is making sure that the things that you have are insured against loss, right? So again, if my vehicle is lost due to rioters, who cares? I'll just get a new one. If my house is destroyed, I mean, I'm not going to say who cares, but I'll just get a new house out of it, right? But if I'm not actively involved in defending that and getting a criminal record because of that, or picking up some charges because of it, I'm of no use to my family if I'm locked up fighting these charges while I still lost the property anyway. So again, I mean, when it comes to property and vehicles and homes and all that kind of stuff, the insurance is going to replace it. Don't worry about it, right? Just make sure you don't pick up some charges because of it, because that's not going to be helpful to your family at all.
It's just stuff. Right. So go back to we've done episodes on information security and how to keep your information, which is the most important thing you have, how to keep that safe. We've gone back and talked about how to spread out your supplies so that if one unit gets attacked, you're still not out of luck. We've done episodes on financial preparedness so that you're covered in case of a devastating loss like that. But it's just stuff, and stuff can be replaced, and most people lose their heads over their stuff, and that's what causes violence. It's just things. Take care of the people. That's the most important part.
Still trying to figure out why people that are rioting always go for the TVs versus like actual useful stuff.
Well, I love how
condone it to begin with, but
I've got a friend that works for Apple here in my city, and he said, what's funny is that all the iPhones and MacBooks and iPads that were looted from the Apple stores. I mean, Apple does a pretty good job at keeping inventory of what's in those stores, and they basically disabled everything. And now people are going back to Apple saying, "Well, you're not going to sell it anyway, so why don't you just unlock it for everybody?" And they're like, "Screw you guys!" Like,
they do a very good job of that.
Yeah. And the best is that they actually say, this phone is locked. Please return it to so and so. And this is being tracked, and we're reporting it to the authorities. And these are popping up on Craigslist and all these for sale sites down in the States, and people are freaking out because they paid $1,000 for an iPhone that's now a brick. So,
well, the funny thing is, can you imagine the moxie involved going into stores saying, "Hey, I stole this one. Would you mind activating it for me?"
I guess it actually, not to digress, but it happens a lot where people actually walk into the Apple store with a stolen phone and say, "Can you activate it?" And actually, the Apple employees are actually told to take the phone. And if the person kind of protests or anything, to just call the police and be like, "Listen, they brought in some stolen property." So there's probably a police file on it anyway. So
yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, like I said, they're very good at knowing where their devices are and how to disable them if need be.
They didn't become $1 trillion company by giving away free stuff all the time. So
definitely not.
So did we talk about getting caught in the riot type of thing?
Briefly, kind of. So we were talking about stay the gray man, right? Don't get involved. Don't contribute to the problem, but don't try to solve it, right? You're not a cop. You're not in full riot gear. Even if you are armed, if you happen to be in a position where you're armed, you are not going to be able to overcome that many people who are that mad. Just go along, don't stand out, and hope for the best. Really.
And when it comes to the gray man thing, I think what we're talking about for those listeners that may not be familiar with it is don't go into a crowd of people wearing tactical gear and having a tactical backpack and looking like a cop. Because to a group of rioters or protesters, you're going to look exactly like that. You're going to look like a SWAT team member or a cop and all that kind of stuff. You're just not going to have the idea. You're just not going to have the identifiers on you, but you're going to stand out in that crowd of people. Have a regular backpack, have a pair of jeans and a hoodie. You're not going to stand out. You're going to be the gray man, so you're going to blend in. And as nice it is to have a nice tactical backpack, it's just going to make you stand out. Just don't do it. It's
So a couple of things I did learn about this when I was doing some research for the topic here is that I guess for the protesters in Hong Kong, social media, of course, is one thing. How they can always identify people that are like breaking the law and stealing TVs and stuff. Just like, do you know this person? That was bad enough. But now I guess between facial recognition technology and they can actually recognize your ears, because they're like I think Alan said pre-show there's unique as fingerprints. So these people are actually getting busted just by the shape of their ears right now. So like you're not going to get away with much if you actually do find yourself caught up in the moment and taking part in one of these things, right?
So what we're saying is bring earmuffs.
Yeah, or like your little face mask above the ears. I don't know.
Yeah, protect you against loud noises and facial recognition software.
Or just don't break the law. I mean, you could do that.
Yeah.
Or you could do that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, since we're throwing out ideas here,
Yeah.
I think common sense prevails.
Number one, don't loot.
How pedestrian is that? Yeah.
Number one, quit breaking the law.
But I do appreciate the memes that are coming at this, where you have I'm just gonna say it's just a white guy coming out of Target with a Lego set. I mean, Target's being looted, and you could take anything you want, and you're taking a Lego set.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you bought Lego recently? It is so
I
expensive.
haven't, but I can understand why he's doing it. But if you want a quick way to identify yourself.
One more kind of thing. If you do happen to get caught up and you do happen to be detained / arrested, one of the things that becomes a challenge, right, is that if your phone gets broken in the process, you may not have contact information of the people you need to call. So if you have somebody that you have a plan to call in the event that you do get detained / arrested / whatever, write that phone number on your arm and get it. So it can't, you've got it available if your phone happens to be destroyed, or if you happen to be disconnected from your phone for some reason. If maybe it gets sent to one part of an evidence lockup and it can't be retrieved, and you're being offered a phone call but don't know who to call. So that kind of thing is really important.
I'm calling Eric. Just telling you guys right now.
I have Eric's
live stream an episode.
I have Eric's phone number memorized.
I had to call Saul.
That's a good person to call.
Yeah.
And we were discussing kind of off air a very little bit about if you happen to be in an area that is being subdued with tear gas. One, have goggles with you. Two, tear gas and CS gas are fairly acidic, so a bottle of water with some baking soda in it will help cool your eyes and your nasal passages. Don't drink it, of course. It's not going to help you if you drink it, but if you swish your mouth out and rinse your eyes with it, that will help neutralize the problem and reduce the symptoms. And
I saw one as actually, it's funny you mentioned that because, bring a gas mask or something. I saw a video yesterday of a protester. They were getting sprayed with, it's probably like, I don't know if it was CS gas or pepper spray, but anyways, they were being sprayed, and a cop walked up to one of the protesters and pulled off his gas mask and then sprayed him. Because this guy was basically immune to it, right? So the cop walked up and yanked his mask off. I don't know what the legality of that is, but
I'll put a link in the show notes too. But just like the opposite, like we were talking about pre-show as well, is that I put a Global Mail article in the notes, and it basically shows where they fired a tear gas canister into the crowd, and 4 or 5 guys with water bottles was able to put it out right on video in like 2 seconds. So I guess what you're willing to counter, right?
If you punt it back to the police, is it like just drawing like an Uno card or something, or is it?
It turns into hot potato, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try that. I wouldn't want to. I think that would be that would escalate the problem rather than de-escalate it, which is, the root, probably the root of the problem with people being mad at cops right now. Anyways, right? Canadian cops don't get into this trouble anywhere near as much because they spend dozens and dozens of hours training in de-escalation rather than restraint and overcoming force. So that's
they're nice. They're just
they're polite.
A lot nicer.
They're nicer, more polite, and we can all use a little bit more polite. However, if you put that particular tear gas canister out, and I was thinking maybe I don't know if like a Rubbermaid tote with a full of water might do that. We were hypothesizing on the effectiveness of the different methods, but maybe somebody out there knows better than we do. That might help reduce the problem rather than just redirect it.
I was just thinking though, Alan, your 60-gallon garbage can full of water, that's 600 pounds. So
they're on wheels.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
you
got me
pick
there.
it up.
Yeah, that's a lot of. When I'm trying to move through a protest or move quickly, I don't think the 600-pound garbage can full of water is going to be my first thing I bring with me.
Well, it doesn't have to be full of water, but like a 60-gallon garbage can on wheels with half full of water is probably you're right. It's probably 300 pounds. But if you had a few of those strategically placed around and some heavy leather gloves, you could probably pick one of those things up.
Strategically
placed. I mean, they're strategically placed piles of bricks, there can be strategically placed garbage cans full of water too, right?
That was interesting because that happened in a number of cities where there was, just pallets of bricks being dropped off, and it's like, who's doing this? Is it Antifa? Is it who's doing this?
It's the brick ferry.
The brick ferry. Yeah. Why do things get smashed? No idea.
Like, weird. I don't know where
do
these
people
bricks
find
come
bricks
from.
in the city? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
They were paving stones. There's an upcoming construction project that
that required a single pallet of bricks.
Required a single pallet of bricks in that specific location right then
during the riot.
The one that was kind of interesting was when the Minneapolis police had to abandon the 3rd precinct because it was basically overtaken by rioters, and they basically torched the building. I mean, they looted it. I mean, I think they abandoned it, but they took most of what they needed to out of the building, knowing that they had to abandon it. I'm surprised they just didn't call in an airstrike and just, since the building's going to be destroyed anyway.
I would take a guess at saying they probably had some form of a plan together ahead of time that if we have to abandon, this is what we take.
Yeah, because I don't think there was anything that was actually but there was one video I saw in Seattle where somebody smashed a police cruiser, an SUV, and took an AR-15 style rifle out of it. And he was holding it, and he only had it in his hand for 10 seconds until a Seattle police officer ran up on him with a handgun drawn and grabbed that AR-15
Yeah,
from
that'll
him.
do
That was pretty quick. That was pretty slick.
It was plainclothes guy, and he basically cleared the weapon and then took off with it. Yeah.
Yep.
So
that'll happen.
Should we talk about the fun and games you can anticipate running into if you get it caught up in a riot?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing is the chance of physical harm, because, depending on which country you're in, even if you're not in Canada, if you just happen to be caught up in some, protest of some sort, say in Hong Kong or something. I mean, during the G20, we had the mass pepper spraying of our protesters in Toronto.
Yep.
All the way up to Hong Kong, they were using live ammo. I think we covered that in an episode about maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
Yep.
Just before the COVID.
Months,
just before the COVID hit, I think they were using up to live ammo at that point. And keep in mind, no matter where you are, it can escalate fast, right?
It certainly can.
So, some of the stuff we can run into: rubber bullets. Anybody been shot by a rubber bullet yet?
I've been shot by beanbag rounds, and I can tell you, I wouldn't want to do that again, especially under duress.
I bet for another podcast, or
yeah.
that was the same weekend I got attacked by a taser. I don't know.
Wow.
I was assaulted with a conductive energy weapon, as well as pepper spray. We did all 3 of them in a weekend, and I tell you, there were a lot of ice packs after that.
Attacked by a taser.
That sounds like a party.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but I've managed to live my whole life without getting shot by a rubber bullet, but I can imagine it would suck on many levels.
For disclosure, it was all in training, and I was planning for all of it, but I didn't like any of it. It was all
I've heard that it's equivalent to getting hit by a boxer. I've
never been hit by a boxer, so I don't know.
I don't know either, but I'm just saying that. I mean, I've been pepper sprayed in the military. That's about the extent of it, right? And I've been pepper sprayed, and I've been in a gas hut, which both of them weren't that great of an experience, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, I've had pepper spray once, but that was more of a fun and games thing, and I can't tell you where that was. But
in the cockpit,
no. Okay, that would be interesting. But no, it was fun and games in my youth. That was quite an adventure. But anyway, that's all I've ever had experience with. But I've seen some of the pictures with rubber bullets, and it looks like it'll break the skin, it'll cause some welts, and swell an eye shut and everything else if you don't get hit in the eye, of course. But it's not a fun thing. That's one of the things to run into, but also the stampede issue. If you get a bunch of people running away from tear gas or whatever, you're looking one way, people are running the other way, and before you know it, you're getting trampled because nobody's going to slow down to see who's on the ground, right?
No, they don't care you're there.
And then we also saw, when people were protesting Black Lives Matters, there were people going out there protesting the Black Lives Matters protesters, and they were literally getting their butts handed to them pretty quickly. And there's guys that, I don't know if anyone was killed, but there's guys that were in pretty rough shape after being beaten up by the protesters, right? So, it all depends what your agenda is going out to the protest, but going out, against a mob of, 1 or 2 or 3,000 people protesting what they're protesting is probably not the greatest idea. So if you want to keep out of harm's way, that's probably a good way to start.
Yeah. Some sci-fi stuff for you there. So it sounds like the U.S., the Israelis have kind of been working on some audio weapons. They're like some subsonic weapons that induce nausea and hearing loss, and because they're loud as well. But they're trying to it's microwave technology, I guess. And basically, they've been trying to introduce those things. That's one thing. If you ever run across that, it'd be interesting experience, I'm sure. But
Cookie from
burns,
the inside.
yeah. But burns is the thing, right? So whether it's burning buildings, burning cars, yeah, you're gonna run into getting burned at some point. Molotov cocktails, or as one newscaster called the Mazel Tov cocktail, which was awesome. I thought it was like, yeah, I think you got that one wrong, but
somebody spell check overrode good research on that one.
that's right. But yeah, so I mean, obviously burns are something you could potentially have to deal with if you get caught in a riot of some sort. But yeah, like I said, so like we talked about this earlier, but the target of the mob changes at the drop of a hat, so you could end up being that target depending on how you're dressed and how you act and what you look like.
We saw even in a number of cities in the U.S. there were some firefighters that were being attacked, fire trucks that were being attacked. And, you know, like we said, you know, if you come up and you're in your vehicle, your personal vehicle, and you come up to a group of protesters, obviously don't try to get through them. But I mean, if you're responding to a call in a fire truck, you would expect to be able to get through. But in a lot of cases, they weren't letting the fire trucks through. They were attacking the fire trucks. And in one case, they set fire to a home that had a family inside, and then they blocked the fire truck from getting to the home to put the fire out. So those are the things that kind of boil my blood when it comes down to that kind of stuff, right? At this point, you're not protesting anymore. You're out committing crime at this point. So,
yeah.
Well, of course, while the police are busy dealing with rioters, the other end of town, there's a lot of opportunity for some opportunistic crime. So bank robbery, mugging, rape, whatever. So if people think the cops are tied up on the other side of town, they're certainly going to act up on the empty side of town, so to speak, too, right? So
that's
something
a
you
great
might
point.
have to deal with. So you might not even be anywhere near a riot, but you might be affected by it nonetheless.
mm-hmm.
So
if there's no one to stop you, then what would you do?
That's right. The purge all.
Yeah, that's a great point. If there's a protest happening on the other end of town and you think you're all safe and nothing to worry about here, well, it might be a false sense of security because, like you said, if everybody thinks that the authority is at the other end of town, they could be up to no good on your end.
Well, a town I lived in that shall remain unnamed had 125,000 people and 5 patrol cars on at any given time. And so, yeah, it wouldn't take much for one end of town for just even a house fire to tie up at least 3 or 4 of them. And then, yeah, it doesn't take much, right? Which is a problem nonetheless. That's why when they talk about defunding the police in certain towns, I kind of wonder if they're planning for a purge afterwards or what they're planning. But
well, I heard tonight as well that I think 9 out of 10 city councilors in Minneapolis are looking to basically dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with some type of public safety organization of some sort. Good luck with that. But
good luck with that.
Yeah.
A public safety organization by the name of police?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably. I mean, you'd have to bring in the state police or the National Guard while you're rebuilding the Minneapolis Police Department with probably the same officers. I don't know. Like, I mean, if you want to replace the chain of command, okay. I mean, sure, but dismantling the entire department for what one person did. Yeah.
Well, and even if it's, again, I don't want to turn this into a political issue, but the actions of that one person are likely representative of the beliefs of the people above them, right? There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. So even if they were looking at replacing all of the chain of command from the top down, how far down do you go is one question. 2, how long does it take? And 3, is that actually going to bring along any change? 4, even if you do dismantle the entire police department and rebuild it from nothing, what are you going to be able to do differently? Because you're either going to hire probably 1,000 new police officers with absolutely no experience, or you're going to have just more of the same.
Or the exact same guys with a different badge, just for optics, right? Yeah. So I mean, because how do you vet them? Like, hey, are you going to step on somebody's neck or like kneel on somebody's neck? Just asking for a friend here. Like, how do you vet that exactly? So,
well, and I mean, reality is that a lot of that comes down to training and expectations by the leadership. If the leadership says, just get the job done and get clear, then you're going to get a really different outcome from if the leadership sets the expectation of do your job and do the least harm possible doing it, and they train everybody to that level. And I think that's where probably Ontario has it a lot better than a lot of other places where the level of training, I would say, is significantly higher. I mean, OPC, I think, or Ontario Police College, I think, is up to 16 or 20 weeks now or something. And there are some police departments in the U.S. that are getting 4 to 6 weeks of here's your baton. This ends for Wamp and this ends for Hold, and get out to the road.
Yeah.
So
I remember in Texas where they were looking for a lot of officers. This was probably like 10 years ago. They were offering a 3-week training program for a civilian to become a rookie police officer. I'm sure you'd have to do some OJT and all that kind of stuff, but it's a 3-week program, which this was again a decade ago, so it's probably not around anymore. But 3 weeks, and you're given a gun and a badge, and you probably do a ride along for a few weeks with another officer, and then you're cut loose at that point.
Wow.
And the age to apply was 19. So you could have people as young as 19 applying to.
Not hormonally charged at all, right?
Yeah, that's yeah. And I just looked in the Minneapolis Police Department is 1,100 employees with 800 sworn officers. That's not an easy task to dismantle and rebuild. And that's
and who would want to now, right? Who would want to have that name on them? The good ones might stick around, but again, like to Ian's point, how do you vet that? You've got people who, you've got in this particular instance, you've got one officer that did something very bad, who had a number of previous use of force charges against him, or use of force investigations, and you had a pattern of excessive force and inappropriate conduct. And then you had 3 other people standing there watching it happen, who had probably never been investigated for something like that before, but it still happened while the 3 of them were standing there watching it happen.
Now, my understanding of those 3 is they were all recruits being trained by that specific officer.
Yeah.
So that gives you a little bit of a.
One of them was 4 days on the job.
Right?
This was his 4th day on the job. So, I mean, if this is your 4th day on the job and your superior officer, your training officer is doing something, to question him in the middle of an arrest, that's not the time and place to do it. You don't walk up to him and say, I don't think you should have your knee on his neck for that long, right? I don't think it would happen like that. This is something you'll probably discuss after the fact. I don't know, but
swap it out and put a 20-year vet in that situation with him. Totally different.
Right. Yeah.
But a new kid, tough spot to be in as the new kid.
It's a really tough spot, and it comes back to the leadership, right? So somebody put him in a leadership role to be training new recruits. Somebody put them in a leadership role, and somebody put them in a leadership role. Like there's for all of those levels, you've got
But see, Alan, that may not come with senior it may not come with. It may just be a seniority thing too, right? This guy has 15 years on the job, regardless of the performance. It's just a seniority thing, right? So
that could be.
Well, and I think that's systemic of the problem, right? Just because he's got 15 years on the job doesn't make him qualified to be teaching other people.
Yeah, agreed.
And same
Wait,
thing.
That's not how it works.
You might have 20 years of service under you, but that doesn't qualify you to be a sergeant or an inspector or a deputy chief, right? Those qualities are a totally different matter that have nothing to do with seniority. And I think that's a lot of the problem, especially in the U.S. They're so heavily unionized that there's no mechanism. There's no mechanism to
be merit-based rather than
and
there's lots of organizations that are not meritocracies. They're just like strictly your number comes up, if you want it, it's yours, and that's the way it is.
Yep.
And it's not just police, it's like a lot of organizations.
Absolutely.
Teachers, there's a lot of occupations, right?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of it comes back to government problems, right? It's the government the government agencies that have all of these people, and they're too big for their britches, and the only way that they can assign a position is based on some kind of arbitrary skill or arbitrary metric, because you can't assess each person individually because they're too big. And so I think that ends up being one of the roots of the problem, is that they just can't do it. They can't promote based on merit because there are too many, right? Like you said, Minneapolis has 800 sworn officers. So for 800 sworn officers, you've got one sergeant's position open. How do you vet, even call it 400 applications for it? How do you vet 400 people effectively for who's the best person in charge? Then we see the same thing with recruiting, even, right? For every, I don't know if it's true across the board, but around here, for every career firefighter position that's available, every position, you get approximately 3,000 applicants. How can they possibly find the best person for that job?
A lot of applicants.
Especially when they might have just talked to the person like once 5 years ago or something, and yeah, like it's not like there's a yearly like peer review or anything happening on with a lot of these jobs too, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so that's, I mean, it comes back to you've got a system that is that has to work on the cheap because it's taxpayer money, and despite the fact that they have to do it at the least amount of cost, they're on consistent budget overruns, so they have to accomplish a goal, and they don't have the mechanism or the ability to vet all of those people effectively. So, one, you're not necessarily putting the best people in role. Two, you're not developing them properly. Three, you're not promoting them properly, and so you end up with somebody in a position of influence that should never have been there, and then you end up with people screaming that they can't breathe and dying as a result.
Which I guess brings to the last point of the dangers of being stuck in a riot: the guilt by association. So whether you're the rookie cop dealing with the experienced cop, he was definitely guilty by association. He's an orange jumper now, right? But there's also the fact is that if you were known as the guy that broke into the Target, 50 years from now, people are still going to remember you're the guy that broke into the Target in the local neighborhood, or maybe you're one of his friends helping or whatever. Or you just watched it happen. A buddy of mine is actually for a good example of the Vancouver riots back in the day when they had the Stanley Cup Championship in Vancouver, and even though they won, they still rioted here.
Yep.
And my buddy was actually on TV because he lived there, right where the riots were taking place. And he just was out in his housecoat watching the riots happen, and just off on the CBC Live came by and asked him what he thought of it and everything else. And even though he didn't do nothing wrong other than sip his coffee watching these people drive or walk by and have their riots, for the next 5 years, people were asking him why he was taking part in that riot. It just guilt by association because he's just associated with the image, right? And so it doesn't take much to ruin your life, other people's lives, your career, anything else. Is just avoid these things at all costs.
In the days of everybody's got a camera and everybody posts everything instantly to the internet. Yep, you can become that person instantly.
And that's the thing too, is what's happening in real time. They may not be able to get a hold of everyone or apprehend everyone in real time, but they're going to go back and they're going to have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours of footage to review. And with facial recognition, all that kind of stuff, they're probably going to be able to nab a lot of people that were participating in this after the fact, right? I don't know if they're going to be pursuing that or what, but I mean, the footage is there, right? You just have to submit a request to, TikTok or Instagram or whoever it was, and you'll get the footage. So
yeah, like the guy that drove the forklift to the Target there through that front door, and it was waving for the camera. He was like, yeah. He's going to get caught sooner.
Yeah.
Anyway,
if he's not caught, I've got some questions.
Yeah. So I guess all in all, good case for bug out plan if you live downtown.
Yep, absolutely. We were saying at the beginning, you have to have plan A and you have to have plan B, and they can certainly interchange. Plan A and plan B can be for all kinds of different scenarios, but it can certainly apply to protests or some sort of unrest around your residence for sure.
Don't have a floor like a street level apartment, be a few stories up at least, and hopefully it's going to shield you from, some vandalism and all that kind of stuff. So
if you're gonna live in an apartment, you're best to live between the 3rd and 7th floors. 3rd floor, your balcony is pretty well accessible from the ground, and up to the 7th floor, it's still accessible by tower ladder on a fire truck.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Good to know.
And I mean, if they're climbing the balcony, you could always go to the medieval ways of protecting your apartment by pouring hot water or hot oil over them. Yeah. Maybe not do that. Just
Hypothetically, you could do that.
Yeah.
Just
legal disclaimer: we do not encourage people to pour boiling liquids on other people.
This
podcast not condone Hughes's. Yeah.
Our lawyer says that we do not recommend that.
Yeah, but we do recommend personal first aid kits, which is
absolutely
anything from a cold pack, burns, little ouch pouch, Band-Aid stuff, not a whole big bug out bag or full of first aid stuff. But yeah, if you're gonna be anywhere near a riot, I'd say it's probably a good idea to have enough to bandage yourself up on a small level at the very least. If you don't,
a little IFAC comes in handy.
Yeah.
a tourniquet, some Celox gauze, and a couple of gauze pads and some Coban will do you a world of good, keeping you going, getting you at least out to safety if the worst does happen. And I think we're gonna do another episode on that sometime soon too, because we need to refresh on it. So that's absolutely. And if you do decide to go participate in some kind of protest, and we fully encourage you to protest peacefully, don't take anything with you don't want to lose. Because reality is, you got to plan for the worst and hope for the best. If you take something with you that you don't want to lose, or that you wouldn't want to necessarily get caught with, if there's something that is, that you have that somebody else might want, maybe don't take it with you. Whatever it may be. In Canada, marijuana happens to be legal, but it also makes you a target if somebody wants it and you have it and they don't. So just leave your stuff in a safe place. Just keep the stuff to keep you alive, and write those phone numbers on your arm so that you don't. If you happen to get separated from your phone, you can still call for help.
And we have a comment in the live chat from one listener. It says, "Remember when we all knew like 30 different phone numbers?"
I still remember all those phone numbers, but they're all from 30 years ago, and nobody answers those numbers anymore.
Or if they do, they don't know you.
Well, and the area codes don't even make sense anymore. It used to be like you had one area code for the whole province or whatever, and now it's like cell phones have a different prefix and everything else, and even my daughter's numbers they're just nonsensical numbers. But
I think I know 3 numbers off by heart. The rest are kind of I probably wouldn't remember them.
I left my cell phone. I left my cell phone in a car one time. Got a ride into work. Had to call my better half to let her know that I was done work. Actually had to go to HR and have my employee file pulled so I could look up her phone number. I do not retain phone numbers anymore. Her phone number is speed dial 2, and ask me what it is beyond that, and it's speed dial 2.
I should remember another phone number, because I think if I get locked up and I called my wife, they'd be like, "So you're going to hold him, right? So he's going to be there for a little bit." Okay, all right, no problem. Perfect.
Yeah, make sure the person who you're calling is actually going to help you.
Yeah, I know where he is. We're good here. Yeah.
You want me to post bail? No. How long will you hold him if I don't?
Yeah. 30 days. Oh, good. Okay.
Excellent.
I am some peace and quiet.
All right. Well, does anybody on the panel have anything else to add before we move on to podcast challenge?
No, I was surprised we were able to fill an hour with that.
Well, we can always fill an hour. Come on, it's a prepper topic. We can kill a couple hours if we had to.
Yeah. Well, for the podcast challenge, let's plan a way of exiting an area of unrest without a vehicle if you live in an urban area, or if you visit one often. So, I mean, if you're going to get stuck in downtown Vancouver and you want a way out, think of a way that you'd be able to walk out, bike out fast without using public transport or your own car, because you never know when they just shut everything down at the last second, right?
And it's a great thing to do because it can apply to pretty much any type of situation, not just riots and protests. It can apply to any type of emergency situation you may find yourself in. So something good to build into your
radiological force
planning.
fires.
Yep.
Yeah, or you don't want to be downwind of those things, I guess, right?
No, you don't.
So looking at upcoming events, we have TACCOM Canada 2020, which is running September 11th to 13th. The Canadian Pro Gun Podcasters Network will be in attendance at TACCOM 2020. Your favorite podcasters will be on hand throughout the show, so make sure you stop by the booth to meet your favorite and pick up your favorites and pick up some swag. You can see the details for the show at the ticket link within the show notes.
All right. So for some shoutouts, I've got a few, actually. So I've got listener Steve for helping me meet up with my ham radio examiner. And so my ham radio examiner, of course, I'd like to send out a thank you to Costa. And the Island Mentor, of course, for helping me get my quad back together and teaching me more stuff than I can possibly absorb in the space of a few hours. So many thanks to all 3 of those guys.
It's awesome. All right, and we'll move into email and iTunes reviews. And I'm just pulling up the iTunes reviews now.
Oh, cool. I got it. I got a comment from Facebook. It says, "Hey guys, just listened to the hog episode and thought it was perfect. It was approached from the homesteader point of view, and as one who isn't trying to become a full-time farmer, but somebody looking for homegrown meat and maybe just a little bit of profit off on the side. It was just what I needed to be sure that hogs were not in my future." Have you guys considered doing a similar episode about cows? Keep up the good work, from Mike. So I've never considered having a cow on this acreage because it's way too steep, and I'd probably have them with a broken leg in 5 minutes. But you guys with flat terrain, thinking about cows yet?
Can't say as I am.
No, I've got a cat. I mean,
I don't have the room for cows.
Yeah.
We're looking at chickens first, maybe goats, but cows are not in our future.
Very few people, I think, have a property big enough to do one cow, and if they do, they probably have 20 cows because the amount of grazing land and general space they need, because they're large animals, it's pretty insane. So I'd say that's more of a commercial op thing. As soon as you get to start talking cows.
I think the infrastructure needed to maintain one cow. You may as well, like you said, get 20 at that point, right? So,
but if there happens to be a listener out there that has cows and wants to talk about it, then drop us a line, feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, and we'd love to have you on and talk about this, because this is a topic that we'd love to cover.
And actually, also in all seriousness, bison, because actually the guy I was working with just the other day asked me about bison, and I was like, haven't got a clue, but they seem awfully big and awfully angry. But I don't know the first thing about it, but it is one of those alternatives that they're low maintenance animals, they're good for the Canadian climate, and so on and so on. It actually is a realistic thing to think about if you have the land to do it. So if anybody raises bison, we'd like to hear about that too.
Yeah, there's some bison farms around here. I'm like within an hour's drive of me. There are a couple of bison farms, so people do it. If there's anybody out there listening that raises bison, we want to hear about it. Let's have an episode.
Yeah, there's actually a guy I know that hunts them up in the Yukon, so they're all the way up there too. So.
Wow, I didn't think they were up that far.
Yeah, no, I was surprised too, but yeah, I guess they're.
I mean, when I think bison, I think like Montana, Manitoba, those places. But
there's the woodland bison and a couple other ones just like caribou, right? Like there's bearing ground and woodland, but there's different species of bison, like as far as size goes and stuff. And these are the ones that go through the Yukon. So.
Just like there's also house hippos for those in
Canada. There's house hippos too, yeah.
The North
I've always wanted a house hippo.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? iTunes reviews, you said?
Yeah, so for our iTunes, we are up to 54 5-stars. We've got 5 4-stars, 2 3-stars, 1 2-star, and that one little guy at 1 star still keeping us honest. So it's a total of 63 so far on iTunes. So we appreciate you guys sending the reviews in. Nothing written recently. The last written review we've got is from February the 26th, and I read that quite a while ago. So, but the reviews at least are still coming in, so appreciate it.
Cool.
And
everybody's got bored. They don't want to write to us anymore.
Oh, at least they're hitting the star buttons. I'll take that. So with that, I will bring episode number 71 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out and submit a review. A written one would be appreciated, so I have something to read at the last segment there.
And we do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we are going live. If you want to find me, you can get me directly on Instagram at PPSWO or by email, Alan with 1L at prepperpodcast.ca.
And for Hughes, for myself, I can be reached at hfxprepper@gmail.com or hughes@prepperpodcast.ca. And I also have my own YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for HFX Prepper.
All right, you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at the islandretreat@gmail.com. I'll speak English today. You can also find me at Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes and YouTube. There you'll find me discussing why government waste in society in general wants to send me off to a peaceful protest and not riot.
All right, and you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat while you're, of course, buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us this evening, and until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.